Black history they don't want you to know. The origins of modern-day policing and its impact. The origins of modern-day policing and its impact can be traced back to the slave patrol. The earliest formal slave patrol was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with one mission: to establish a system of terror and squash slave uprisings with the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. Tactics included the use of excessive force to control and produce desired slave behavior. Slave patrols continued until the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment. Following the Civil War, during Reconstruction, slave patrols were replaced by militia-style groups who were empowered to control and deny access to equal rights to freed slaves. They relentlessly and systematically enforced black codes, strict local and state laws that regulated and restricted access to labor, wages, voting rights, and general freedoms for formerly enslaved people. Members of slave patrols could forcibly enter anyone's home, regardless of their race or ethnicity, based on suspicions that they were sheltering people who had escaped bondage. The more commonly known precursors to modern law enforcement were centralized municipal police departments that began to form in the early 19th century, beginning in Boston and soon cropping up in New York City, Albany, Chicago, Philadelphia, and elsewhere. The first police forces were, not surprisingly, overwhelmingly white, male, and more focused on responding to disorder rather than crime. The legacy and effects of biased policing are far-reaching. The United States alone is home to the world's largest prison population and the highest per capita incarceration rate. As of May 2020, there were 655 people incarcerated per 100,000. Prison, parole, and probation operations cost U.S. taxpayers $81 billion a year. For the past 5 decades, the federal government has forbidden the use of racist regulations at the state and local level, yet people of color are still more likely to be killed by the police than whites. The Washington Post tracks the number of Americans killed by the police by race, gender, and other characteristics. The newspaper's database indicates that 229 out of 992 of those who died that way in 2018, 23% of the total were black, even though only 12% of the country is African American. Policing institutional racism of decades and centuries ago still matters because policing culture has not changed as much as it could. For many African Americans, law enforcement represents a legacy of reinforced inequality in the justice system and resistance to advancement, even under pressure from the civil rights movement and its legacy. In addition, the police disproportionately target black drivers. When a Stanford University study and a research team analyzed data collected between 2011 and 2017 for nearly 100 million traffic stops to look for evidence of systematically racial profiling, they found that black drivers were more likely to be pulled over and to have their cars searched than white drivers. They also found out that the percentage of black drivers being stopped by police dropped after dark, when a driver's complexion is harder to see from outside the vehicle. But the persistence of racially biased policing means that unless American policing reckons with its racist roots, it is likely to keep repeating mistakes of the past. In The New Yorker in 2020, it stated, "The crisis in policing is the culmination of 1,000 other failures. Failures of education, social services, public health, gun regulation, criminal justice, and economic development." The Origins of Modern Day Policing, Part 1. Black History They Don't Want You to Know.